All right. Morning, everybody. Part two of responding to Jeff Durbin. So I thought today I would make a response to his attack on failed prophecy. It seems like that's kind of a big thing. And like I'm gonna try not to be too hard on Jeff Durbin because obviously I know he's just in this particular video I was saying he was just giving a presentation kind of off the fly, right? I mean, he had an outline there, but anyways, but I was surprised because one thing that he brought up, as he said, he brought up the Deuteronomy, or man, I can't remember where it was, but basically where it says that if a prophet prophesies and their prophecies don't come true, then pretty much you don't need to fear him. And then I thought it was kind of funny. Jeff goes out of the ways to make the point, just like, and that's a death penalty. Like that's how serious this is, right? And I'm not saying like breaking God's commandments, especially taking the Lord's name in vain, which would kind of be what that would be. That's a pretty big deal, right? But guess what? Also was a death penalty, breaking the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? And it should be understood under the law of Moses, these were max penalties. So it's like it could be up to that much. It didn't have to be. It wasn't like a guarantee, right? That's a whole nother lecture, I guess, or talk. But I just thought it's funny how it's just like, Joseph Smith, I mean, he pretty much got what he paid for. I mean, he's a false prophet and he got killed. So, that's kind of what God says needs to happen to those. That's how serious that is. You know what I'm saying? Well, Jeff, have you broke the Sabbath? That's how serious that is. No, we're not under the law anymore. Although it seems like he used that Mormonism's not according to the law and the prophets, so it's a false religion, and yet we're not under the law anymore. I have a hard time figuring out how exactly they make all that connect. I mean, I know they do, but it's funny when they weaponize that against, and yet, I don't know if you guys are tracking what I'm saying. To me, it's kind of funny. It makes me chuckle a little bit. Anyways, but I was surprised one of the things he used to prove that Joseph Smith was a false prophet is Joseph Smith claimed that Christ would come in their generation, or there would be those alive in his generation that would see Christ's second coming. And he's just like that. Therefore, and that didn't happen, right? So therefore, we know who's a false prophet. Well, I was kind of surprised on that because immediately Matthew 24 popped into my head. And once again, I know this because, like I said, if it's anti-Mormon, I've probably listened to it. If it's anti-Christian, I've probably listened to it. I like to just, I don't know why. I like to know the attacks or the arguments. But there's something that the atheists bring against Christianity all the time is Matthew 24. And then they use the same thing. You know what I'm saying? If a prophet make a prophecy and it don't come to pass, then you may know he's a false prophet, right? Well, according to Jeff Durbin, Christ proves himself as a false prophet. And well, let's just read it. You don't take my word for it. Man, should I read all of it, or like it's Matthew 24? Pretty much you should just start at the beginning to get it. So I think I might breeze through it a little bit. I'm going to start on 3 because it sets it up, right? Because you need to know the context of even the question to know why the critics of this passage respond the way they do. It says, starting on verse 3, Matthew 24, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming," his coming on the cloud, "and of the end of the world?" So what they're asking is, Joseph Smith said, or Jesus Christ said, that when he was crucified, he says that you will see me on the right hand of the Father coming on the cloud, right? And they knew that was talking about Daniel. Like, that's why the scribes like, you blasphemy, you've heard it yourself. They ripped his garment. Is because they understood exactly what Christ was saying. He's coming on the cloud. That's a big deal in the Ancient of Days and Daniel, And that's what they're asking. Like, when are you going to come in your glory? And when's the end of this world going to be? Like, when you're gonna this paradisical reign that we're all been waiting for, the millennium? You know what I mean? Like, when's this going to happen? And Christ goes on this big old long monologue. Jesus answered, saying unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Now hang with me, guys. I think I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's like, it's pretty good. I mean, to get the context, you kind of need to hear the whole thing. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. And we know this, like the faithful would understand, this is talking about the destruction of the Jerusalem in 70 AD. And a lot of the Christians didn't suffer in that because of this, what Christ said. So I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to disparage this completely. The Christians that believed the words of Christ, they seen these things happen. They got out of Jerusalem, and they didn't, when the Romans besieged them, and there was cannibalism. In fact, a mother cooked her own daughter, or her own child to eat. The things that happened in Jerusalem even made the Romans, they're just like, these guys, this is disgusting. Like, we never seen anything like this, you know what I'm saying? So the followers of Christ didn't suffer in that because they seen this sermon that Christ gave, and like, we're getting out of Jerusalem. This looks like what he was talking about. But let's just keep going because that's one side of it, but there's a lot in this, right? There's a lot in this prophecy. And they're specifically asking him, like, when's the end gonna be? When are you coming back? Like, when are you coming in your glory to reign, you know? All right. He says, pray your flight not be on the Sabbath day, etc., etc. And except those days be shortened. Verse 22, except those days be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. That can also be put to the siege, because if Rome would have sieged any longer, they all would have died. Hundreds of thousands of, well, I don't know exactly the number, but it was a lot, did die in this siege. And so a partial fulfillment, and that's kind of how it is like there's definitely partial fulfillments, but then there's other things in this prophecy that are clearly, well, let's just keep reading. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, the very elect shall be deceived. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So I think this would be Christ answering what they're asking, like, when are you going to come in your glory? When's the end of the world? He's just like, look, don't let anybody deceive you like, oh, he secretly came here. Like, this has actually happened in Christian religions. You know, the secret thing happened in heaven, and that's when he came. And this, you know, that's Seventh-day Adventist kind of that. This happened in heaven, you know, or this, you know, this. And Christ's like, don't fall for that. Like, as you see the sun lighting up the sky in the east, as the sun comes, the sun rays shooting out, the lightning shooting out, which is this Greek for light, you know, light rays, light streams shooting out, and the sun coming. That's how the coming of the Son of Man is going to be. Don't be deceived. For his second coming, like, don't let anybody fool you. For who's, all right, and blah blah blah. He keeps going. I'm just going to skip down. Learn the parable of the fig tree when its branches are yet tender. We're starting. That's 32. And putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer's nigh at hand. So likewise, when you see all these things. Oh man, I gotta back up. I can't skip this part. All right, dang. I shouldn't skip that. I should just kept reading. All right, we're gonna start in verse 30, just whatever. You guys just need to read it yourself. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trump, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now let the parable of the fig tree, when his branches is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at your door. Now listen to this. This is verse 34. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So we have a little bit of a problem there. He said, don't let no one deceive you by saying that I've come, because the world's going to see it. It's just as the sun comes, like, don't believe. They say he's in a secret chamber, he's in the desert. He's just like, no, it's going to be that. It's going to be, when I come, that's going to. And then he says, this generation won't pass away before you see all these things fulfilled. So obviously the critics are just like, well, even Jeff Durbin, I guess Christ is a false prophet. Like, you know what I'm saying? And there's obviously faithful ways to look at this, right? There's many ways to look at this. And maybe generation means something different than we think it does, right? What's a generation? And what exactly does that mean? But anyways, I thought it was funny because that was one thing that he said that made Joseph false prophet, was he said that Christ was going to come in his lifetime, and Christ that he was going to come or in their generation, and Christ says that he was going to come in that generation. So I guess according to Jeff's logic, Joseph Smith's actually 2,000 years, at least 2,000 years closer to Christ's coming than Christ was himself. Or maybe there's, more to look at, but that's the problem I have with the critics, the Christians that attack the Mormon, is it's a double standard. It's always a double standard. And the thing that they don't realize, that I see, and I've seen it quite a bit, is when they're witnessing to Mormons, they think they're saving them. Is what you'll find is it's the same thing that happened to Jeremy Reynolds that wrote the CS letters, right? If you don't use a double standard and you use the same metric that Christians teach you to look at the Mormonism with this critical eye and find the problems with it, if you take that same critical eye and start looking at the New Testament, all of a sudden it starts slowly shaking, and you start eroding that faith. And before long, you throw out the New Testament, and then you go to the Old Testament, and before long, it's got the same problems, and you throw out the Old Testament, and then you're an atheist, like Jeremy Reynolds that wrote the CS letters, right? So ultimately, if Christians witnessing to Mormons, if they're not careful, they're just giving them the mindset to throw out Christianity next. Because they're not actually coming from a faithful point of view. They're coming from an accusatory and a negative point of view, and they're not looking at, which makes sense, right? Because let's just say hypothetically, hey, I have a testimony that Mormonism's true, right? So if it is true, one truth falls, the other truth falls. You pull at one, you're pulling at the other. That's how truth works, right? And that's how it was for me. That's definitely what I've experienced. But that's, like I said, Jeremy brought up, that was one thing Joseph Smith said, but what did Joseph Smith say on when Christ was going to return? Because I find this quite interesting. And let's just read this. I wanted to read the DNC account of this, because he actually has a revelation of the DNC, but maybe I'll just read this account that I have, because it's more of his telling of the experience, and they all say the same thing, right? They're a little different, but the same message, right? So we'll just read this real fast. Joseph Smith says, "I was once praying earnestly upon this subject, the subject of when will the Son of Man come. And a voice said unto me, My son, if thou livest until thou art 85 years of age, thou mayest see the face of the Son of Man. Now, in his other account in the D&C, he says, I was left not knowing whether he would come. If I lived to 85, he would come in his second coming, or I would die and meet him. That's pretty much what he says there. This one is pretty much the same thing, but it's worded a little different. I was left to draw my own conclusions concerning this, and I took the liberty to conclude that if I did live to that time, he would make his appearance. But I did not say whether he will make his appearance or I shall go where he is. I prophesy in the name of the Lord God, and let it be written. So now he's getting confident, right? And that's the thing you got to realize is there's opinions. Joe Smith made a thing. He says a prophet's only a prophet when acting as such. And that just makes sense, right? Prophets are not infallible, and they have their own ideas and their own conclusions unless God's actually speaking through them. You know what I'm saying? You have the Spirit on you speaking to you. I think anybody could agree with that. But so now he's prophesying with some pretty good confidence. I prophesy in the name of the Lord God, and let it be written, the Son of Man will not come in the clouds of heaven till I am 85 years old. So he already clarified. He's not saying that that's when it's going to happen. He said, I was left to conclude. I don't know if I will die and meet him or he'll come, but I know he's not going to come until then. That's one thing that the revelation that I got when I was praying was clear. The revelation said, hey, till you're 85 years old, I'm not coming in my second coming. That's clearly what he's saying here. Then read the 14th chapter of Revelation, 6 and 7 verses, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of judgment is come. And Hosea, 6th chapter, after 2 days, etc., 2,520 years, which brings it to 1890. The coming of the Son of Man never will be, never can be, till the judgment spoken of for this hour are poured out, which judgments are commenced. Paul says, Ye are the children of the light, not of the darkness. That day should overtake you as a thief in the night. That day should overtake you as a thief in the night. It is not the design of the Almighty to come upon the earth and crush it and grind it to powder, but he will reveal it to his servants, the prophets. Then he continues. Once again, this is outside of his prophecy. Like he prophesied that Christ will not come until before 1890. That was just what he said. And he clearly said, I didn't know if that meant that I was going to die and see him, but I just know that if I live till I'm 85 years old, he's not coming before then. That's what he said. And now he's just discussing things. This is once again him discussing his thoughts on it. Judah must return. Jerusalem must be rebuilt. Once it's interesting, when Joe Smith is uttering these prophecies or ideas, Judah was still scattered. There was no nation of Israel, right? And so I find it interesting that now Judah has returned, so that has been fulfilled. Jerusalem must be rebuilt. Well, it's interesting. We just moved the capital to Jerusalem. We're definitely going in that direction, right? I mean, and the temple and water come out. Oh, Judah must be rebuilt and the temple. So I think we're seeing that the third temple is still on track to being built. And Joseph Smith's pretty much saying, hey, Christ ain't going to come before the temple's built, right? So there's things that he thinks has to happen before Christ can come. And the temple ain't built yet, so I'd say if you're kind of Mormon and you think Joseph Smith was being inspired here, then till the temple's built, Christ ain't coming. All right. And the water of the Dead Sea be healed. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple, etc., and all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. There will be wars and rumors of wars, signs in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, the sun turned to darkness and the moon to blood, earthquakes in diverse places, the seas heaving them beyond their bounds, there will appear one grand sign of the Son of Man in heaven. But what will the world do? They will say it is a planet, a comet, etc. But the Son of Man will come as the sign of the coming of the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, which will be as the light of the morning cometh out of the east. So he's pretty much once again quoting Matthew 34 here. So he's quoting Matthew 34. That to me doesn't sound like a failed prophecy at all, if you're taking that, right? He's just saying, in fact, I would say that's so far everything he said has come to pass, right? As soon as the third temple's built, it'll be another ching, you know what I mean? So we'll see. That's still up for debate. Maybe Christ will come before then. I'll be like, oh, Joseph, you got that wrong. But once again, even that he was outside of where he says, I prophesy, write it down. Christ will not come for 40 years, you know. All right, there's another interesting prophecy that he uttered. Well, this is another thing. So he gave that, I believe, in 1832. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that. This was given in 1844, where he says, oh, let's see, blah, 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 blah. Let's see how long I'm getting. If I had not actually got into this work and been called of God, I would back out. But I cannot back out. I have no doubt of the truth. Were I going, now this is important. He says, were I going to prophesy, remember that, were I going to prophesy, I would say the end of the world would not come in 1844, 45, or 46, or in 40 years. There are those of this rising generation who shall not taste of death till Christ comes. So, once again, it's kind of, I feel like Joseph Smith feels pretty confident on saying this generation, because, or maybe the Lord feels confident, because that's what Christ says. This generation won't pass away before I come. Christ has already said that. He's already said this generation will not pass away before all these things be fulfilled, and I come on the cloud with my angels and my hosts. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you're gonna say that makes Joseph a false prophet, then it also makes Jesus a false prophet, right? Because he used the same verbiage. All right. He keeps going. So he's talking specifically here. He's talking. He's responding to the Millerites. I don't know if you know the Millerites, which is where the Seventh-day Adventists eventually come from, but I think it's William Miller had predicted that Christ was going to come in 1844, like I think the fall of 1844. It's known as The Great Disappointment. There's a pretty good movie on it. But anyways, man, people quit their jobs and quit everything, and they all gathered, you know what I'm saying? And there was because he had his numbers in the Bible, and it was pretty compelling. It looked like it was all going to work. And he had it all written down. And so they were predicting in first I think it was 1843. And then he re-predicted, and it was 1844, I think the fall of 1844. But Joseph Smith's responding to that when he's given this a little monologue here that I just read. And also, but I take the responsibility upon myself to prophesy in the name of the Lord that Christ will not come this year as Miller has prophesied. Okay, so he mentions Miller's name there. So he's basically saying, I can prophesy that Christ ain't going to come in this year as Miller prophesied, because Christ already told him, I'm not coming for at least 40 years. For we have seen the bow, and I prophesy in the name of talking about the rainbow, in the name of the Lord, Christ will not come in 40 years. And if God ever spoke by my mouth, he will not come in that length of time. And Jesus Christ never did reveal to any man the precise time that he would come. Go and read the scriptures, and you cannot find anything that specifies the exact time he would come, and all who say so are false teachers. I find this interesting because that's one thing that Jeff actually used against Joseph, basically saying, it says that no man knows the day and an hour, and Joseph Smith said it, so he's a false prophet. Joseph Smith himself is actually agreeing with Jeff there, basically saying, yeah, anybody that says they know the exact day and hour that the second coming is going to be is a false teacher, because Christ himself says no man knows the day nor hour, right? So I once again, I guess the thing that Jeff is talking about is where he says that there are those who won't, in this generation, that won't taste of death before they see these things. Well, maybe generation means something different. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. You're going to have to, however you figure out to square up what Christ said, all these things that will happen in this generation. Use that over here is what I'd say. Because they're clearly tied together. You know what I'm saying? It's not a stretch. He's clearly using Matthew 24 as the outline of what he's talking about. So whatever God was saying in Matthew 24, he's also saying here. And I just don't see a failed prophecy there. So there's another one that's kind of interesting, which Jeff didn't bring this up. Another guy did that I was listening to, but I thought was interesting. But he's like, God told Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon, verily thus saith the Lord unto you, there is no weapon that is formed against you that shall prosper. And he's like, well, Joseph Smith got murdered, so that was a false prophecy. Oh, okay. It's funny because that's the exact same thing that the devil thought about Christ, and that's what happens to all prophets. The devil thinks that he can prosper against them by killing them. Did killing Christ stop the gospel? Did killing Joseph Smith stop Mormonism? You know what I'm saying? In fact, it's interesting. I was listening to a Mormon, no, it's not a Mormon, a Christian scholar, and he was talking about, he studied the early Christian church, and he's saying a lot of people don't realize how the Christian church just grew. They think it grew different than it did. And he says it grew. It started out as small as with the 12 apostles, and it had a steady growth rate, and it slowly grew. And he says, for instance, he says, the Christian church is growing at the exact same rate that Mormonism is growing at. That's how the Christian church, that's the same rate that the Christian church was growing at. So, hey, did the death of Christ stop Christianity? No. Did the death of Joseph Smith stop the growth of Mormonism? No, it's still growing, right? So it kind of made me chuckle, right? Because it's such an atheist attack. It's just an atheist way of, it's like the same thing that they said against Christ, right? And you just see that over and over, this double standard. All right, well, what about the prophecies that Joseph Smith uttered that did come true? And I didn't have time to look up. Once again, I'm not doing a deep dive into these things. We're just kind of trying to just whatever comes to memory that I can remember. But he obviously predicted or prophesied on the Civil War pretty dang accurately. Definitely as accurately as I think Matthew 34 did, Christ did, right? Because a lot of things that Christ prophesied in Matthew, was it 34? Geez, my mind's blank. But anyways, a lot of things he prophesied, I brought out, were clearly fulfilled during at least halfway, right? It's kind of confusing because they were halfway fulfilled, and yet there's things that obviously weren't fulfilled. And so you're just like, well, maybe it's a partial fulfillment, or maybe it's like a shadow of things to come. Like, Christians wrestle with this. That's like they all have their different ideas of what's happening there. But it's clear, we all agree that it wasn't totally fulfilled, because there's just things he said that weren't fulfilled yet. Unless you're a preterist, and then it was all fulfilled, and hey, that's it. You know what I'm saying? So, but Revelation and prophecies are kind of that way. You know what I'm saying? There's partial fulfillments, and then there's later fulfillments. But Joseph Smith, without a doubt, predicted the Civil War. And that's found in Doctrine and Covenants 87, and this was given in 1832. He says, verily thus saith the Lord concerning the wars that will shortly come to pass, beginning at the rebellion of South Carolina. So where did the Civil War start? First shot was fired in South Carolina. Interesting. That was what? I don't know how many years, 20 years before, 15 years before, 10 years before. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician, but you guys do the math. 1832, whenever the Civil War started, which will eventually terminate in the death and misery of many souls. And that's true. The Civil War claimed more American lives than all other wars we've been in combined. Um, if I remember right, you can double check that. But lot of bloodshed. And Joseph Smith, he made more than this prophecy on that. About the bloodshed that would be poured out because of the saints, the treatment in Missouri. In fact, there's another story that comes to mind where this is found in They Knew the Prophet, and there's lots and lots of testimony of the prophecies Joseph Smith uttered that came true. So that's what's funny is we're only going to focus on these ones that didn't. People don't follow the Mormon faith because it's completely dead, right? But anyways, there was another prophecy uttered where he had a lawyer friend, and he went that helped him with all his court cases, right? And he went in to see him, and his lawyer was talking in the other room with another client, and the client was trying to give him some land in Jackson County for payment. And he said, well, I'll think about it. And then the guy left, and he came out and met Joseph, and Joseph told him, he says, I wouldn't take that land as payment. He says, you'll see the day when every one of those houses is burnt down and there's nothing more than chimneys standing, is what he said. And that man who uttered that prophecy, I literally lived to see that prophecy fulfilled. He says where they came in, because the Missouri was helping the North and the South. The North came in and burnt all the buildings, tore down all the fields. You know what I'm saying? This is just common history. So, destroyed all the grain, and just treated the people in Missouri just like the mobs did to the saints. So that prophecy was literally fulfilled. Anyway, he goes on here. For behold, where was I? All right, death of misery of many souls. And the time will come that war will be poured out upon all nations, beginning at this place. So I find that interesting. He's basically predicting that there's going to be a war that starts here, South Carolina, and then it's going to be poured out on all nations. We hadn't had a world war before the Civil War. And now how many world wars have we had? Well, World War I, World War II. It's interesting. I can't remember if it was Einstein that said, we don't know how World War III will be fought, but we know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. That's a scary thought. Because technology is too good. We can't afford to have another conflict. But anyways, so I find it interesting. Failed prophecy. I would say that's a fulfilled prophecy, right? If you want to criticize the Bible, you can. If you want to just, if all you're looking at is problems, then you can. So there's another thing that I'm gonna talk on, I guess, and that was which is just kind of bad for Jeff to do, because he says, it was proven that Joseph Smith was a fraud in the court of law. He was brought to trial and proven that he was a fraud in the court of law, and blah, 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 blah. That's just not true. In fact, something Stoll, his last name was Stoll, the man he was working for, treasure digging for, actually came to court and acquitted him. Just like, no, these charges are bogus. Like, I hired Joseph. He's a good man. And I don't know, what I'm saying, who's bringing these charges. So the guy that he was working for, that they were saying he was scamming and whatever, came and basically cleared his name. So he was not ever proven to be a fraud and a fraudster in his things. The guy he was working for stood up for him, said, I'm hiring him to do this. In fact, Joseph Smith himself was trying to get Josiah, that was his name, I think. Josiah Stoll, he's pretty much was just like, hey, this is futile. Like, we're not finding any gold. You know what I mean? So we need to stop digging. That's a whole nother story. But the fact that he just, like, it was proven that he was a fraud, and like Mormons are so stupid that they don't know this. And it's like, really? It's interesting because actually Joseph Smith was acquitted on every account. Anytime he was arrested, and by the time they got him to go to trial, and he was like found innocent, right? Over and over again, which is why they killed him. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you can get a man locked up by the law and put away forever, you don't have to kill him. So it's kind of like same thing with Charlie Kirk or any other person. It's like, if you can't stop them through logic and reason, And that's why they were frustrated with Joseph. They never could get him through logic or reason or whatever. And so it's like, hey, the only thing you can do is kill him. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not saying that proves that he's a true prophet or not. What I am saying is that definitely proves that they were not able to get him in the court of law. So to say that it was proven that he was a fraud is just that's just a lie, Jeff, 100%. So I don't like lies. If once again, if you are going to bring accusations, then let's do enough research to make sure that they're actually legitimate. That being said, I have no doubt Joseph Smith wasn't perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like, no man's perfect. So, but I hope that helped. I guess I'm going to end it there because I'm getting pretty long. And so, like I says, if you enjoy these and you have more criticisms that you would like me to respond to, then shoot me a message and I will look into it.